Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. Being human, being born in this human form, raised in the society that we are raised in, the rules, the do's, the don'ts of how it is established, in the way that we are conditioned. Inevitably, a belief is fed as to who we are and what does it mean to be alive? What is this life for? The very intrinsic nature, biological nature of being human or just being alive is to appreciate or be attracted towards pleasure and to mitigate pain because of the very quality of it. Pain being painful. If I'm hungry, crying will happen as a baby. I may not cry today if I'm hungry. Well, you never know. And with that intrinsic characteristic of our existence as humans, it is implied in every way of growing up as as a little infant, a toddler, a child, and then growing up into a teenager, a young adult, adulthood, old age, maybe. That in order to be happy, in order to be successful in life, in order to be, in order to feel that you did okay in life or life is good, you need to gain something. You need to gain the reward from the parents. You need to gain the approval of the parents as a little toddler or as a child. And then that just becomes um, ingrained, deeply, deeply ingrained, the more and more it is impressed upon the system by whether the surroundings or whether our own interpretation of the surroundings. They are all a mix, a soup of the same happening, the same conditioning, updating itself in a way that it does. And what happens is we are bound to live as if life will be okay when I keep my parents happy, or I am famous among my friends in school, or I gain good grades, I get all A's in the school, or I excel at the sport, or I'm good at dancing, or good at speaking, or good at making jokes to lighten the mood in my house if the mood is tensed or the surroundings or the environment is not pleasant. So inevitably, we find ourselves fulfilling, trying to fulfill a sense of lack, which believes that it will be fulfilled by gaining something from out there. And not to mention our society, the marketing campaigns and the products and cars and houses and jewelry and outfits and everything that is being sold um, knows this and taps into this belief by advertising the product as the very means to the end of that fulfillment. And in that convincing, if we are convinced, if we feel that, hey, if I have this car and not that car, my friends will like me better, or I may have a better status symbol, or it may be a house or bank balance or a world tour, whatever that outlet, that projection of an object may be, which is believed to add on to me, which is lacking, to not lack anymore. Then it becomes a game of gain. I want to gain approval. I need to gain money. I need to gain success, fame. I need to gain relationships. I need to gain harmony. I need to gain peace. I need to gain enlightenment. I need to gain detachment. I need to gain understanding. I need to gain happiness. So, what was a belief and a mechanism of moving towards gaining pleasure, 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 puts everything, including the very search as a seeker, the inward search, as a means to gain something that will fulfill this inherent sense of not being okay, not being enough, something missing. And if we are lucky, if the flow of life includes in itself to deliver any or many of those, gain the objects that we feel like we need to gain in order to feel okay. So if the gaining happens, and if we are lucky, we may realize that they are delivered. I have what I thought I needed to gain. I've gained it, and yet I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel that I'm not lacking anymore. I still feel this sense of something missing, something's not okay, something needs to change. The paradox or the matter is that this journey of seeking, first seeking outwardly, and then something turning inward, and then seeking inwardly. This seeking journey is not a journey of gain. It is the very attachment to outcome that dictates and believes and projects that the search will be fulfilled when something, whatever it is on the pedestal, is gained. And that's why I use the ultimate goal of, at least of many of us sitting here, is enlightenment. When enlightenment is gained, the search will be over. It's not in the gaining of anything that the search will be dismissed or the search will be fulfilled. It's in the journey of loss that the search will fall away. It is actually the very falling away, the very losing of the search, that what we think enlightenment is happens. Losing the illusion of me being the person as something real, the loss of the loss of a confirmation that anything in life is ever going to fulfill the sense of lack, the very loss of the sense of lack itself, when that lack is absent, the loss of misunderstanding, the loss of suffering. It's only in the loss that what we're really looking for is revealed. To already be the case, to already be the very natural state underneath all of that which needs to be lost, which needs to fall away. And that which already is doesn't need anything, doesn't lack anything. There is no process leading to it. And that itself is the very source of the misunderstanding and the loss thereof. It's not a gaining of bliss. It may come, it may go. It is not to remain. It is not the gaining of a constant active state of being peaceful. It may come, it may stay, it may go. It is only in the loss of believing that it is something, and it is in the loss of clinging to that something or resisting the absence of that something, that what is already is found to be the case. And that's why um, the wisdom teachings have called it the razor's edge, because it is so easy, so effortless for everything to just fall away in a momentless moment, and for it to be revealed as always already here, timelessly, throughout the very search, before even the search began, now, and as timelessly always to be there, the permanence of it. And with the same ease, with the same habitual tendency, it's just automatic to again get back into the misunderstanding. And hence it's the razor's edge. We flow Misunderstanding, loss of misunderstanding, misunderstanding, loss of misunderstanding. And it's the very maturity of the system and the seeking process that the misunderstanding, even though it is here in the system, it is what is being experienced, and yet it is so painful. Something in the system knows that, oh, I'm not meant to be feeling this. This is already it's in the very essence of the experience, including clinging or resistance, that clinging or resistance is seen to be what the problem is, not what we are clinging or resisting. It's not in the object of the clinging or resistance. It's the very movement of clinging or resistance itself that is seen to be the problem now. Not that I don't have the what I'm clinging to, or I have the what I am resisting. And that already is grace. It is something, can be very grateful, can be very humbled to see that, oh, I don't need the car. It's me thinking that I need the car is the suffering, is what when is absent, there is this. It'll be inaccurate to say that when that type of belief or arising is absent, this is present, because this always is present. Everything arises and falls away, including the very sense of me. This in experience can be confirmed is always at the base of everything that is experienced, including the very sense of me. And now what may happen, just because we are so conditioned to cling or resist, that once we see that the clinging and resisting movement is the problem, or that is what keeps or veils what is already, we may start to resist the clinging or the resistance movement. Or we may start to cling to the revelation of this when that happens. And that then is what needs to be seen as the cause of suffering, not the very arising of clinging or resistance to the object or the pleasure or the pain, but the very clinging and resistance towards the clinging and resistance by the blessing of better understanding. But now it has taken on the costume of understanding and is using the same concept to add more suffering. And when we are talking like this and maybe revealing some mechanism within the system, it is so normal to think that then who's the culprit? Where do I go and whose head do I cut off to just finish it all off? And that's exactly what we have been saying. When that is seen, we may just burst out in laughter. Like this, the one that is asking the question is the suffering, is not the sufferer, is itself the suffering. There is no sufferer. There is no doer. There is no one doing the suffering. There is no one doing the falling away of suffering. So the one that is hopelessly frustrated as to what do I do to end this is the very arising of the suffering. In the absence of that frustrated sufferer mechanism, what already is may reveal there may also be a possibility of this mechanism as the seeker or the seeking mechanism becomes ripe enough. There might be suffering. There might be a sense of me that is suffering or that is still attached to an outcome, or coming from a sense of doership, feeling shame or blaming the other or feeling proud. That movement very well might be present in the system, and there might be a simultaneous ground of being which is aware that this is here, and which is also including the understanding or the absence of misunderstanding, more accurately, that something needs to be done about this. That ground of being is grounded in the knowing that there is no one doing anything. It's not personal. It's just here. This is what's content of experiences right now, and there is no doer to manipulate it or change it or fix it. Because if it needs to be fixed, means there is a doer here who thinks it knows what it needs, what needs to happen, and that already is attachment to outcome, the outcome being the end of suffering. So the end of suffering has been put on the pedestal as the outcome that is needed for me to be okay in life. So now the car, the house, the fame, relationships, love has been replaced by end of suffering. And it is very useful in the beginning when there's still attachment out there playing out. It might be very, very useful as a phase to put on the pedestal that suffering is what needs to end for me to be okay, which is actually accurate at that level. And then there may come a time when one may be able to see that even suffering is not a doing, it's a happening. So I didn't put suffering in place. I cannot take out suffering from its place either. Suffering is here. What to do? Just like pleasure is here. What to do? Pain is here. What to do? And that doesn't mean that the body doesn't move and doesn't take the hand off the fire if that's what the pain is. It's just an attitudinal surrender to the flow of life, which includes the presence or the absence of suffering. And this concept has been a lifesaver for me as it grounded more and more that peace of mind. Well, what we're really looking for is peace of mind in daily living, which is falling away of suffering. So it's not in the gaining of peace, it's in the losing of suffering. And there is no loser or gainer here. It's just as the suffering falls away, in the absence of something, that peace of mind is revealed to already be the case, the base state. not with peace, but without suffering. So, total understanding in itself is not a presence of a set of concepts that are considered to be the absolute truth or considered to be the wisdom that now that I have this knowledge, I'm enlightened. That's not what understanding is. Understanding is just the absence of ignorance. It's just the absence of misunderstanding. And that's such a good news because all this life we've been running and running out there in here, trying to understand what is it? What do I need to gain? Learning, unlearning, learning again. And it's just pure. There's nothing to gain here. There is no need to gain anything if enlightenment is what we're looking for. There's no need to look for enlightenment. When the looking for anything falls away, enlightenment may have happened. And then nobody's even interested to know or confirm whether it has happened or not. That's why wisdom teachings sometimes say that when there's no one left to be enlightened, enlightenment is. And that's what happens when we use language to put a label on something which is not even something. It's only the absence of everything else. And that's where the concept of not this, not that, not the body, not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the feelings, also arises from. It's a very valid and valuable practice or movement to really see for oneself that none of this is. Not a lot can be said about what is. What can be done accurately, well, more accurately, is what is not. Like not it, not it, not it. Arising in it, falling away in it. The sense of me arises in this and falls away in this. Thoughts appear in it, play in it, fall away in it. Emotions arise, play, and fall in this. Feelings arise, play, fall away in this. What doesn't arise and doesn't fall away? Are we ready to lose? And yes, that idea is not going to fit well in the societal situations that we live in day to day. And that's why it even might be wise to not talk about these things unless there is a sense of resonance in a connection where these things might be valued, a discussion on these things might be valued. Finding ourselves ready to lose the ignorance is scary, would be scary. There comes this fear of losing all that we have known until now, all that we think had brought us security, and everything we have, our very sense of identity. So it's really a willingness to lose everything. The willingness to lose the need to be right, the need to be validated from out there, the need for approval. It's essentially losing the very need, which is the very sense of lack. And as we talk about um, being willing to let go of these um, existential sense of needs that we somehow act from consciously or unconsciously. This doesn't mean that when they fall away, or if they fall away, or if we stop acting from there, is that's what the flow of life entails for our life as a happening. That our preferences won't be there. That doesn't mean that I will sit in a toxic situation where there's verbal abuse going on and I would just be peaceful, sitting there smiling, not really being affected by it. It may mean that I don't need to sit there anymore. Previously, maybe from a need of um, belonging or feeling maybe people pleasing or whatever our tendency might be, we may sit and take all that in for a secondary reward that we might be gaining from it, believing that that will fulfill our sense of lack. And as that is put aside, it is easier to just get up and respectfully leave, not participate. because there's not a fear. We're not acting out from a place of attachment or fear anymore, because it is seen that it's not out there. What we're really looking for is not to be found out there. And as someone who might be becoming acquainted with the possibility of being that way, questions may arise that, well, won't that make me dysfunctional if I'm not um, acting from my existing conditioning of being moral, being respectful? And we may find out that if our need to be a certain way of how we have believed that we should be or shouldn't be, if that falls away for even temporarily, momentarily, for smaller things in life, we may find that actually we may become ever more functional. Maybe not in the terms of the society's way of functional and dysfunctional, but that may not make us disrespectful, because we feel like if we really let the leash go, we might be animals, or, you know, animals in the sense that we will become savage, or we'll just say anything to anybody. We won't have a filter anymore. And that's not really what it's about. As the shoulds and shouldn'ts of what we have believed ourselves that how we need to be, almost subconsciously now or even unconsciously, as that washes off, we may find ourselves ever more constructive in our communication, ever more authentic, and less manipulative. We don't need to act as a victim anymore. We don't need to blame. The blame doesn't arise. The shame doesn't arise. So there is no need to keep justifying our or others' stance in the, because that's what happens when there is blame or shame. The drama can end. And yes, that can be shocking for me if that's what's happening within me. But then it can also be shocking for the people who are around me and are used to getting that stimulus. But that is the very service. By being authentic, by inevitably being morphed or being transformed by life in a way that the possibility of coming from a place of suffering starts diminishing more and more. That is the very service we offer without really actively serving anything around us. It may be shocking for them, they may act out, but they may be even pleasantly surprised and may be like, oh, wow, it's much simpler. And we don't know how it will be until it happens. And I just feel to say it again, that now that we're describing this happening, this process, there might be a tendency in the seeking mechanism to cling on to that as an outcome now, that, oh, this is what I need to be okay now. And then just pointing out again that it's not in the gaining of a way of being, a way of behaving, a way of feeling. It's in the losing of that belief that I do need something. Quite a contradiction to what we're used to. The word loss has such a negative connotation to it that it just feels very counterintuitive to use this label as something useful on the quest of self-realization or end of suffering. And we may realize in our own personal journeys that many of us, if not all of us, however, I would like to take the risk of saying maybe all of us on this journey um, have one way or another come from a place of loss. It was only in the loss of something or someone or some idea, some disillusionment that may have happened in life that really just shook us in a way that it ever so appeared that whatever we have known so far is not it. And in our daily life, what this acceptance of the idea of loss may translate into is just a deep surrender in the knowing that it's okay to lose. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not be right all the time. It's okay to lose an argument. It's okay to apologize. It might be a very beautiful breaker of the ego and may soften us a little bit more. And it is only in the softening that disillusion of misunderstanding may happen. And there is no one that is doing the hardening or the softening. So as we share these descriptions, it's just what may happen or what may not happen. There is no one to make it happen or to stop it from happening. And being able to confirm this, see this for oneself, is already the very softening agent. The sense of needing to do this or needing to stop this, whatever this may be here, is the very hardened attitude that thinks or believes that it knows what life is, what it is, what needs to happen, what is good for me, what's not good for me. And it takes softening, humbling to really accept, actually, I don't know. I don't know what I am. I don't know what is life. I don't know what is good for me. I really don't know. In the I don't know, the very not knowing, lies the freedom. The freedom of opening up, to really be open to see where this goes, to be able to witness what this is, this entity or this person called Gurleen is. What does she like? What is she like? What is her shadow, if we want to use that word? What is her motivations? What is her things that she encourages within herself, things that she tries to sabotage, things that she feels good about, or the things that she's afraid of. And it's not an active, project that is taken on. It's just a softening where you're just there. And all of it is happening anyway. And now, because there is no involvement in it, there is freed up energy that can just be aware choicelessly, effortlessly, without trying to be aware of what arises. All the patterns start showing up. They always were showing up, but now there's just enough space to be able to witness them. And in the very space of the witnessing, something shifts. The patterns start flowering into one thing or another. The relationships start morphing into one thing or another. Because the energy of involvement is not trying to manipulate them anymore. Not that there was a manipulator before. It was just what the movement included. And with the absence of involvement, the patterns are free to dance. And the dance moves are different, inevitably. as the light of involvement is not shining anymore. It's just all a wonderful play, a wonderful, play, just going on. We may have our own interpretations or definitions or descriptions of it based on how it is appearing to show for us. And yet there is this element of really being able to see that even though we may talk about it, we may label it with words, we may talk about patterns and how they morph and evolution, just even inner evolution from beginning of the seeking to here. And yet there is this deep knowing that actually I don't know. Who knows? And then who cares? Because the one who may care is the very doer entity that wants to know, because when I would know, I would be okay. Something won't be missing anymore. I wouldn't feel the lack anymore. So it's not a cynical who cares. It's like, who cares, and just dismiss it. It really invites an inquiry of that who is it that really needs to know? That really needs to know that I am done suffering, or I'm enlightened, or who I am. It's the very doer mechanism, the very suffering mechanism. And it's in the loss of believing this doer mechanism that the journey maybe is about. It arises with something lacks belief in it now. And that lack is worth million gains. And now as the doer mechanism takes that as something to gain now, that I need to lack belief in this doer. Well, here I am back again, the doer. Let's open it up for conversation, discussion, questions, comments. Raj.
Hello.
Hello, Raj. How are you?
Fine.
Great, great.
Many teachers, they say this is too obvious. We do not see it because it is too obvious. It is too simple. Then the seeker, then I feel I am that foolish and stupid not to see it. What is too obvious? What is too simple? What the what they are pointing to?
It's not that I'm too stupid or too foolish to not see such a simple what already is. It's just that I'm too intelligent. The very intelligence that I'm gifted with, that is the very reason why we can ask the question of who am I, also acts as the obstacle. Because the I want to see myself as an object, and it's not an object. It's not even a subject. It's within which the subject and the object, including the very question and the questioner, is arising. So it is the simplest of the simplest, but it's not easy. Why? Because we are complex beings. We are way too intelligent to let the intelligence go and just be like, okay, I can't get it.
But for me, what I understood by this, when I hear this, is God is everywhere. All human beings, all the animals, all the plants, all the objects around you is God, but you fail to see it. So it is so obvious. It is everywhere. It is so simple, yet we don't see it. This is what I understood.
We see it is what happens in life as an impersonal unfolding. And if we fail to see it, that's also just life unfolding impersonally as it is. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. That's true.
So everything is perfect just as it is. You agree with that? So one French teacher, he said he saw in a glimpse a crime happening, and he saw clearly that the criminal was God, the victim was God, the knife was God, the blood itself was God, everything was God. And he said, from now on, whatever happens, whatever horrible thing will happen, he will just assume that it is perfect, it is all God, even if it is not clear in what way it is perfect, in what way it is divine. So everything is perfect just as it is. Even so my conclusion is everything is perfect just as it is. All the crime happening, the rape, the corruption, the torture, whatever is happening in the world, the horrible stuff happening in the world, all is perfect in the sense that it's God's will. Everything is God's will. So it is perfect in this sense. It is God's will, so it is perfect.
That is actually a very healthy way to interpret that concept. So everything is perfect as it is a beautiful concept, which is very useful in many different stages of the seeking journey. So whether I agree or not, whether someone agrees with this concept or not is not really the point. The point is that it is a concept, and it might be accurate at certain points in the journey. So in the when a turning inward happens in the process of the seeking, where there's a disillusionment from the outer world, there might be a very strong disinterest in whatever this body is doing or whatever is going on outwardly, and there might be a turning inward that may happen choicelessly. In that sense, everything is perfect as it is helps one to really anchor themselves in understanding that arisings within oneself are just perfect as they are, whether that's a suffering arising, whether that's a resentment, whether that's guilt or shame, or peace, or goodwill or humility. So all the good or spiritual arisings or peaceful arisings, and all the unenlightened and suffering arisings, the sense of clinging with one and resisting the other. So this concept is very useful in cutting that clinging and resistance off. That, okay, I am feeling hatred, and versus at another moment I'm feeling bliss. So everything is perfect as it is, does a beautiful job, almost the same job as you said, that everything is God's will, or everything is happening impersonally. So these concepts are basically just meant to cut off the clinging to the bliss that is just an arising, right? And the resentment, so the resistance to the resentment, where we need to just finish it off or get rid of it. So that resistance itself can be cut off by really using this concept as an anchor that it's perfect as it is. It's divine. It's also an arising like the bliss. So in the inward movement, this concept becomes an antidote to the clinging and resistance within oneself as the arising start. And overall, outwardly speaking, when we use this concept out of context, and as you very much use the example of a murderer murdering someone, and yes, the understanding does say that all of that playing out is God, including catching the murderer, putting them in jail, going on a trial for them, and maybe giving them a death sentence, or maybe them just getting on bail and roaming around free. So whatever may happen, it's from the very beginning to the very end. It's just that we don't have the whole picture, and that's why just looking at this frame of reference, we get stuck at thinking that, oh, it how is all this horrible stuff divine? And that's true, but that really means that what do we mean by divine then? Divine is not all good. Divine means it is all arising within that same consciousness, within that same one or not two-ness of all there is, which we may call God. And you very accurately mentioned it, that it is all God's will, is then it implies that it's all perfect because it's all God's will. But that doesn't mean that then we just sit and let someone stab me. Like if someone comes with a knife, and I'll just be like zenned out, and maybe I will, who knows, but I highly doubt that. But maybe I just have another knife in my hand, and maybe I do some self-defense here, right? So all of that is divine. The non-violence and the violence. Divine doesn't mean that it's good or it should be that way. Divine just means that it's a manifestation of that not two-ness of all there is. This life, this design of life that we're living is based on a spectrum of duality. So peace comes with the opposite of suffering. Goodness comes with an opposite of evil. So it's just the chemical reaction of this manifestation that it has appeared as the good and the bad, and the peace and the suffering, and the ignorance and understanding. So it hot and cold, rage and humility, maybe. So it's just the very understanding. It's perfect as it is, as in that basically means that it is all by design. It is
Yeah.
designed to be this way. So then the meaning of the word divine can be shifted if we are mixing the concept of it is all divine with all the bad stuff that happens in life. It is divine in the sense that it is, as you accurately said, just life unfolding impersonally. Another way to say it is that it's just God's will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you for sharing. Ranko.
Hi, Gulin.
Hello, Ranko. How are you?
I'm nice. And you?
Good, very good. Thank you.
Yeah. What I was, about losing. So I think there's also fear of losing, which is very deeply ingrained. And sometimes we cannot even see it because it's very subconscious.
Yeah.
In a way. But it's very important to actually recognize that it is imagined, that fear. And we can see it when we try to understand functionality, like functionality of our mind, especially our thinking mind. And if we compare like what happens in real situation and what happens in our thinking mind, let's say about worry, you're worrying about things will happen in this way, and how they happen is totally different, you know. But when you see that your thinking mind is very unfunctional and you see it in a daily life situation, then your thinking mind starts to be very crazy in a way. Fear starts to arise in it. And it even presents you with like more options, like in worry. Now you have like not just one option, but it will represent like 3, 5 options and things like this. He tries to survive in a way. This whole structure tries to survive in any way it can. It becomes very imaginative, very, very imaginative, even in an unfunctional way, you know, how to say it, wrong, not a wrong way, but in a way of misunderstanding, very deep misunderstanding. And you start to see it more like a ghost. So this ghost is fighting for its life. And maybe the right perspective to see it is it's a very frightened child, very, very frightened child, which is fighting for its own existence. Like you said at the beginning of the satsang, when we are children, we are trying to survive in that way. We are trying to please our parents. So this pattern is still happening when we are grown up, but this pattern is not now very functional. It's not needed anymore.
Yeah.
But also I'm very impressed with that imagination. How this thinking mind starts to be imaginative. It's really impressive. It's really impressive. So if you see it like very frightened child, then starts to be very imaginative. You know, in that way, you can feel even compassion for that part of you.
Yes. 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 That reminds me of a video a long time back. I just watched like a YouTube reel or something where someone, like some organization that were in the work of rescuing stray dogs, and there was this little dog that had some skin condition and was very, very petite and not nourished at all, was hiding under like a truck, and it was probably rainy or all water and stuff. So the person was going in there to like rescue them. And it was so scared that it didn't really, it wasn't in the space of understanding that whether they're trying to save me or kill me. So he just bit the person, but the person probably is used to it and they maybe had some experience of this happening to them before, or they were trained, I don't know. But they didn't stop trying to, hold him and get him out from under the truck. And he got bit in multiple places, but then the dog was then put in a towel, and then he was held, and he was still getting bitten, but still held, and just expressing the process of how this goes just reminds me of that video. That's exactly what it is. That inner, we use the word inner child these days for that deep, suppressed, repressed stuff that has been shoved so deep down that really becomes our unconscious motivation of existing and doing everything and not doing what we don't do and doing what we do, saying what we say, not saying what we don't say, without even knowing where all of that comes from. And as that becomes more conscious, with more and more space of non-involvement, that's exactly what you say. Like, it just starts appearing. And because by its very nature, it is hurt and scared, that's all it can show up as. That's the very fabric of it. So it's not trying to make us afraid or make us dysfunctional. Its own very fabric is made of shame and guilt and all the heavy feelings and arisings that have been unprocessed in the system. And yes, as you talk about the compassion, it is the very maturity that life may bless us with, that if there can be compassion for that and not a resistance to that, that already is the antidote. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. You're okay now. Let's
Sorry
go.
about that. Some Wi-Fi
Yes,
issues.
yeah.
Yes, so where were we?
Yeah, we were at losing, so we lost our Wi-Fi
Yes.
connection.
And we lost the Wi-Fi. And yes, we were at compassion for the loss.
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry, we're just trying to do something with my camera here,
Okay.
and I just got blur.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
Okay,
okay.
well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So compassion for that fear of loss, that fearful little unprocessed mechanism, which might be very, very deep. It might be a lot. It might be overwhelming. It might be overwhelmed itself. And if there can be compassion that may arise, because the way you just expressed that, if you can be pleasantly surprised at it, it's like, wow, that's like, what story? And then you can feel compassion because it really comes from a fearful place of, oh shit, like the worst may happen. It immediately goes to the worst. And if there is enough space in the system to really feel compassion, oh my God, like how scared are you to directly reach to the worst outcome without even any space for questioning that? And that is really the space, the loss of involvement. And this exemplifies what we were talking about in the last few minutes before we opened up for questions, is that we may not become more dysfunctional with the loss of involvement. We actually find compassion for the dysfunctional arising. And that is a gift. That is maybe the gain out of the loss. And that can only be gained after the fact we are okay to lose. We're okay to lose our clinginess. And then something that is so used to clinging and resisting shows up in the form of clinging and resisting, of course. And then if we don't resist it, knowing that that is the misunderstanding, but if we can come from a place of compassion, that already is more understanding, penetrating the misunderstanding. And bingo, like you just explained it beautifully.
Yeah, because I find it very helpful in a way to really recognize that this fear is imagined. So I always try to inquire into these options, what will present to me as a fearful options, how they are actually real and how they will manifest.
Yeah.
And probably none of them will manifest. It will manifest totally in different way. Like yesterday, I had the appointment with my friend. We were discussing some new projects that we will be involved, and I was trying to offer a simple solution in a way. And I was predicted that my friend will offer some very complex solution. But actually, when we meet, he even offered me a more simpler solution than my own solution. So even it's very, very subtle in a way. Sometimes you just don't see it actually.
Yeah. Yes. And it is, what a joy to just be able to see that. And without taking it personally, it's like, oh, why am I so obsessed with not trusting the other, or whatever we may make about from it. But if we can just be surprised, oh wow, like I'm so good at reaching the conclusion in this way. And what if the conclusion, and then having the experience of not reaching the event concluding that way, if that can just counter our pattern without any involvement of, oh, I should be this way or I shouldn't be this way, or the event should have happened that way or shouldn't have happened that way. If all that narrative is absent, then it's just such a joy to watch changes happen.
Sometimes this process is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes. And sometimes it is, when will it ever end? That's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Radko. Always a joy to hear from you. There is a question from YouTube from Dharam Das Karmakar. Who's your idol? Well, thank you for your question. say to that, foremost, life itself is a teacher. The way life unfolds and the way it is interpreted within the system itself is a teaching. And yet, life also brings about beautiful teachers in physical form to cut off the blind spots, to show us the blind spots, to cut off the misunderstanding. So many of you would know, but my teacher is Roger Castillo. He lives in Australia. He has a YouTube channel, Roger Castillo, with that name. You can look him up. He and his framework, which actually is the framework that his teacher shared. So his teacher was Ramesh Palsekar from Mumbai, India. And then he was a student of Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharishi. So in a way, you can say that's the lineage, that's where the framework, the concepts come from. So the Wi-Fi acted up, we went on hotspot, then the hotspot acted up, now we are back on Wi-Fi. But I would like to thank everyone for your patience, apologize for the losing of the signal so many times. And hopefully we'll fix it for next Sunday. And we'll see you next Sunday, same time, same place. It's all just a happening. I love you all. Thank you. Thank you again for joining.